It's always interesting to listen to economists analyzing the economical issues we are passing through in this country and even suggesting better ways to go to achieve success, or should I say solution to our economical problems. But to my greatest surprise, it appears that the government of the day is always paying deaf ears to those analyses and suggestions, thereby doing the old things that has never yielded the expected result, and also expecting a different result from that, which is not going to be possible. And it will shock you to know that in this country we have everything it takes to solve our economical problems, most especially bringing down this high cost of living and inflation to the lowest minimum in this country. I will tell you how, but before I continue this video, if you are a tribal bigot, regional jingoist, or should I say you do sentiment for a living, for your mental health and well-being, bounce from this video now. But if you don't, we not really send you for here. Now, are you aware that the decentralization of both government agencies and economical activities in this country will go a long way in solving most of our economical problems? And I'll give you an example. But before then, if that is done, you understand that most states has no business waiting for federal government monthly or yearly allocation. In fact, at the end of every financial year, there will be the one that will be giving federal government something, which will be like, federal government, take this, instead of expecting something from the federal government. And let me even shock you the more. Are you aware that some of these states who you thought they are the ones generating the highest revenue now, if decentralization is done in this country, they might not even see half of the revenue that some of these states who are not doing anything now will be generating in their own region? And just like I told you, I will give you an example. Let me start with this issue of Seaport. Now, in this country, the most popular and working seaport in this country is that of Lagos. But are you aware that there are other geopolitical zones that has what it takes to operate seaport in this country, just like Calabar, Aba, Port Harcourt, just to mention but few? And I even heard that it costs cheaper to import from China to Calabar than to import from China to Lagos because of distance. I also heard that there are proposals for these seaports to be working and running as it's supposed to be. But the government of the day is always paying deaf ears to those proposals. And I don't know if they think by paying deaf ears to those proposals that they are punishing the importers. But let me shock you. Yes, they might be punishing the importers by allowing them to go through those stress of importing through Lagos and paying huge amount of money, just like 5 to 6 million, to transport their goods from Lagos to their business location. But at the end of the day, the final consumers of those products will pay to the last kobo of every stress they went through. In fact, they might even be making more money as a result of those stress. So stop being surprised that the prices of goods and services are skyrocketing to the roof, even to the extent of affecting those goods that are being produced locally in this country. Oh, you expect somebody that produces or her goods locally in this country to sell it cheaper, and after he might not be able to buy the foreign goods. Nobody will do that. In fact, as the importers are adding money, the local producers are also adding money. But if decentralization is done in such a way that those geopolitical zones that have the capacity to operate seaport are operating and functioning, now it will left the importers, the sellers, and the final consumers to have different choices to make. Now, as an importer, before you import any goods into this country, you have to calculate which seaport is closer to your business location and it's cheaper for you to import through, thereby creating a fair level playing ground and a big competition in the business market, which will be 2 seconds to bear. The prices of goods and services will begin to go down drastically. And you know what that means? The almighty inflation will begin to go down to the lowest minimum. In fact, what more can I say? And you never finish. You first of all, listen to this analysis, and as you are listening to it, be clicking on that share button and subscribe in case if you have never done so for more updates. And after that, I'll be back. Let's go there.
People say, oh, Lagos is standing at advantage because Lagos has seaport, Lagos has a port, and Lagos has everything. And they cited the fact that there is a deep seaport community, another one coming up in Badagry. Now, I expect these governors, they have governors forum that is very, very powerful. I come from the southeast. And the southeast is one region. Remember that the old eastern region was the fastest growing in the Commonwealth. And the whole things that made it there are still there. I was looking through the gas reserve of Nigeria. Nigeria has a gas reserve of over $1.4 trillion. Untapped. And most of this gas reserve sits in the southeast of Nigeria. Nigeria today has a coal reserve proven of over $302 billion. And most of these coal reserves are in the east. and the Kogi axis. I expect the Governors Forum, Southeast Governors Forum, the National Assembly had amended the constitution in such a way that things like rail is now on the concurrent list. If Akwa Ibom is doing deep seaport, Lagos is doing, what stopped the Southeast Governors Forum coming together? The other day, the governor of Imo State said he wanted to dredge to Orashi, which is good. You can do a mini seaport. If you think the advantage Lagos is that they have a seaport, you can sit down with the president and those in charge. What do we do to make One or Calabar Port or Akwa Ibom Port to be as competitive as Lagos? What do we put together to make sure that we dredge from the Atlantic into Orashi? It will take about $150 million to do that.
Or even push
I'm just, even if you want
our mining resources to be taken off the exclusive list.
I am coming. Exactly, you push for it. Do you know that if the Southeast governors, today now, if you clear a container in Lagos to take it to the Southeast, it's about 6 million naira on the road. If these governors are truly altruistic, if these governors are creative and thinking like the likes of Jokonde, Simon Bakwe, and Michael Oba, what they should be pushing under the aegis of the Southeast Governors Forum or Southeast Development Commission, set up an SPV. Each of them will take 5%. Get a private sector investor. In fact, interestingly, one of the biggest dredgers in Nigeria are owned by an Igbo man, Nest Oil. He bought the Globeja dredgers. They can go into a private-public partnership arrangement, dredge into Orashi, get the licenses, do a deep a seaport, even if it's a mini port, so that vessels can come into the Southeast. And which is something they should be thinking. On the issue of rail, the most lucrative rail route in Nigeria is the Lagos, Shagamu, Ore, Ijebode, Asaba, Benin, Onitsha, Owerri, Port Harcourt, Seko Bakaba, Umuahia, Okigwe, Enugu, back to Abakaliki and Afibo. Then it's 817-kilometer corridor that will take $5.2 billion to do. $1.3 billion equity contribution and the rest 25-year debt funding. If the Southeast governors today decide to work with the Southwest governors and the South-South governors, 11 states, they can set up an SPV. In 5 years, we will do that corridor. It's a corridor that has 200 million ton cargo traffic every year. It's a corridor that has 300 to 500 million passenger traffic every year. It's a corridor that can pay back investors in 7 years, under a DBOT for 45 years. You sit down with the president and negotiate and discuss this. But interestingly, we are so saddled, unfortunately, with those that the constituent units, who unfortunately control for the resources, who are not thinking internally. The coal resources in the Southeast, the gas in the Southeast, if we have governors who are thinking, they have governors forum, they can sit down with knowledgeable private sector players. How do we tap into this latter? Let me tell you something. VAT is actually a derivative of consumption. If you create an enabling environment for companies to establish in your area, for business to come to your area, you will generate a lot of VAT, and then you will share better. So but the problem we have is that these governors are only thinking about what they can get from Nigeria.
Whether it is a derivative of consumption or whether it's a derivative of production, some states will still suffer. They don't have the numbers in terms of population. They don't have industries. They've not, invested in terms of industries or creating the enabling environment for industries to come in. And so, however we decide to generate that, some states are going to suffer, and that's where the challenge is, and that's why you see them almost as though they are fighting to say, look, this is how we should share it. This is how we should. And I wanted to ask you, because for those who do not understand what this means, because there are Nigerians who basically do not understand what all of this means, whether we are doing equality 50%, what that means, derivation 30%, what that means, and population 20%. They are confused as to what it means. Just break it down for us.
Okay, good. Derivative is supposed to be where those things are consumed, where the economic activities took place. That is where you get 50%. Equality just simply means the same sharing formula, put it in a basket and then use the same demography. And then population. Oh, I am 40. And of course, there's still doubt about population of Nigeria based on 2006 census. Let us not deceive ourselves. Nigeria is the only place in the whole wide world where those that live in the desert claim to be more populated than those that live in the coastal areas. Go and check anywhere in the whole world. Now, let us even leave that. It beggars belief. It saddens me when we say there is no state in that some states are suffering. They are suffering because they deliberately want to suffer. There is no state in Nigeria today that cannot generate $10 billion revenue annually within its domain if the governors are able to look inward. I'll give you an example. Netherlands, 41,000 square kilometer landmass. Netherlands has an arable landmass of 1.9 million hectares. In fact, Netherlands had to build 1,400 kilometer shoreline embankment to protect themselves from being carried by erosion because they are under sea level. 18 million people. Netherlands generates and exports 124 billion euro agro exports annually. They generate over 648 billion euros annually. Niger State is 2 times bigger than Netherlands. In fact, most states in Nigeria are bigger than Netherlands. All we just need to do, agro technology is the lowest hanging fruit. You can create, say, I'll give you an example now. In the north of Nigeria, we've done the numbers. I have a team that look at the economy and dissect it. If we decide today, the governors of the North, 19 Northern States, decide today to work with the presidency to set up 2,500 agro-industrial clusters, agro-pastoral scheme, just like we have it. I'll give you an example. In Netherlands, annually, they generate about 24 billion euros from the dairy value chain. 1.6 million cows in 18,000 dairy centers go pastoring with agriculturists. They produce 800,000 tons of cheese and 12 billion liters of milk. 24 billion euros. The arrangement we have in the north, 2,500 agro clusters, each of them will take about $6 million to do. Each of them will create 5,000 jobs. Each of them will generate $49 million annually. We will have $109 billion annually from that place into the next 40 years. Imagine if $109 billion is coming from that area. The kind of VAT revenue that they will generate from that area, they are not thinking about. In the southeast,
have a situation where where we produce and where we process are 2 different states. So production comes from one state and processing goes
you
to another state.
you can actually create enabling environment for everything to happen within your domain. You can actually. It's about creating. Okay, I'll give you an example now. I saw the other day on video. He's about destroying trucks laden with beverages, enforcing. I have been privileged to travel around the world. In United Arab Emirates, that is 100% Islamic. They have areas where, in fact, there was a day I entered one of my hotel rooms. I opened the fridge. I saw a tot of alcohol. They say $70. One of the ways they prevent people from drinking is that they put a lot of taxations on those beverages to discourage people. But if you think you want to drink, you have to pay for it. But in Nigeria, the same people will break the bottles. Then the beverages will be consumed in Lagos State, will be consumed in Imo State. And somebody will sit after destroying the means of livelihood. He now want to control 15% of the VAT coming from Lagos and nowhere. Does it make sense? So we must build an economy that is very, very competitive. Today, why is it that in the Middle East, they are allowing these things? If you look at the structure of the UAE, there are 7 Emirates coming together to unite to form one country. And they have different laws, they have different dynamics. Other Emirates are opening up like Dubai, because Dubai went ahead of everybody because of the lax regime in that area. And that is what it means to be very, very competitive. If we decide to put in place the right constitutional and fiscal framework, just like we had between 1960 to 1996, I bet you in 10 years, Mr. President has always announced that he wants to build a $1 trillion economy. If we put in place the same fiscal and constitutional regime that we had between 1960 to 1960, I bet you in 12 years, we will build a $2 trillion economy. Why? Because the governors will now look inward. It is not a case of monkey the work, baboon the chop. Everybody will now look, what do I do in my own state to generate revenue? In Imo State, where I come from, we've done the numbers. We can easily generate nothing less than 2 trillion naira from Imo State every year. The Southeast can generate between $20 to $100 billion annually across the value chain. The Southwest can generate nothing less than $61 to $90 billion internally if the governors look inward. But unfortunately, everybody is fixated with Abuja. And Mr. President and his team, all I expected governors, okay, Mr. President, since you have begun to adjust the fiscal revenue sharing formula on the tax side, can we extend it to other products, oil and gas, gold, silver, agri products? And when you do it to coal, and then they can ask Mr. President, can we now reduce some of this on the exclusive list? Let mining go into the concurrent list and all those stuff. That is what we expect proactive thinking governors to be doing. But sitting down in Abuja to say, okay, let us reduce to 30%. It is not moving. They are not moving this country forward. And I will encourage Mr. President to stand firm. In fact, Mr. President has always been an advocate of sovereign national conference. He has always been an advocate of fiscal federalism. He should go all the hog. If that is the only thing he achieves in his regime, trying to restructure the fiscal regime of Nigeria, history will be kind to him.
So one of the things that was also said, of course, the issue of VAT should not be increased. They've also talked about the idea of no reduction in the company income tax. Are we also missing out? Because again, on one hand, you're saying don't increase VAT, which is good, but don't reduce company income tax, because it would seem as though the governors were thinking based on what they would get, and not how that would trickle down and impact on job numbers, for example, because these are the businesses that employ. And if you at least reduce tax for them, you create room for them to invest in other areas. I mean, were we thinking, or were they thinking in that regard when they were saying the reduction in?
They are not. See, the problem we have is that we are short of thinkers and proactive developers in the mood of those we had in the First Republic. I'm sorry to say it. They are talking about. I'll give an example. In 2002, Elon Musk, the wealthiest man in the whole world, paid a whooping tax of $11 billion to the U.S. federal account. $11 billion. Most corporations are leaving Nigeria, PZ and all of them. They are leaving because the environment is not conducive. There is insecurity, there's multiple tax regime, and which is what Mr. President is trying to reduce. I'll give an example. PZ made a huge loss in Nigeria in 2023. But if you look at their operation, they actually made the highest profit after tax based on operation of 38% compared to their operation in other parts of the world. But they lost out because of FX devaluation and FX-related losses. All I expected the governors to sit down. And I said, when we talk about insecurity too, everybody begins to look at the center. As a governor of a state without Abuja, I will not share an inch of my state with any hoodlum or bandit. The governor of Zamfara State even stated that they know where the bandits are. The people know who the bandits are. They are not unknown. And he said with the right political way, we can destroy them in 2 weeks. We expect the Northwestern Governors Forum to sit down with Mr. President. This is what we want to do, to ensure that there is no banditry, there is no ISWAP, there is no local wara in the whole of the Northwest. I expect the Southeast Governors Forum to sit down with Mr. President. We want this, we want this, we want this to destroy insecurity. And I'll give you an example. If today we want to destroy insecurity in the Southeast, all we just need to do, if we decide to be very transparent, security is indigenous. Let me tell you, every community knows the good, the bad and ugly. And the good are being hindered because the very minority evil people have AK-47 and means of oppression, which is unlawful terror. If we decide today to do what is right, go back to the 1, 2, 4, 6 electoral wards in the Southeast. Ask the leaders, the clergy, give us 100 of your sons who you can trust. Bring them under what we call agro rangers. Do clusters of 1,000 hectares in every ward. Get the federal government to support you. Set up a security trust fund of 120, 150 billion naira. We will fund it in 24 hours in our labor. We have people that can fund it. And if you bring the 100 people, train them under it will be tripartite supervision, the National Security Advisor, the governors, and whoever that will head in every state. Equip them with AK-47, just like we have the civilian task force in the north. Getting us in to give us 3 armored personnel carriers in every local government areas. When you take 1,000 hectares of land from every of the 1,246 electoral wards, you will have reduced any place where the bandits will hide. Give them concussion drugs and allow the people to go to their forest and fish out the kidnappers and the hoodlums. When you have these people being paid well, and you have agro parks that can create between 10, 15 billion naira every year in every of these electoral wars, there is job and everything. Insecurity will be a thing of the past. Unknown government will be a thing of the past. Sit at home on Monday will be a thing of the past. But these governors are not after all these things. If you ask them, they will tell you, oh, the federal government controls the army, the federal government controls the military, the federal government controls the police. But we know that security is beyond kinetic. It's winning the trust of the people, working with the people, and using the people, the good people, to flush out the very minor bad people that are creating problems for us. And when you have the conducive environment for 24/7 economy to grow, Nigeria will blossom. So I expect every one of them to sit down. Leadership is all about protection of life and property. That is number one obligation of every leader. But these guys will see, if we have compassionate, empathetic, honest leaders in the mood of Jokonde, in the mood of Michael Okpara, in the mood of Simon Bakwe, in the mood of Obasanjo Awolowo, in today's Fourth Republic, Nigeria will be fixed in less than 1 year. But the problem is that all they are thinking is about, oh, how do we get FAC? How do we get Jack? How do we share it? And how do we loot it? I'm sorry to use the word. And that is what we're experiencing over the last 25 years.
All right, so one of the things that people have said is that, which you also mentioned, is the harmonization of the tax regime, where, I mean, this presidency is saying We do not want the multiple taxation, which has actually hindered investment. Are we likely to see more investment, whether local or foreign, now that it's not been passed, but once it's passed, more investments into the country?
Let me tell you, one of the reasons why I love this tax policy is to try to remove most of the multiple tax regimes. I'll give you an example. I chair a group that has a rice mill in Baraba. We loaded a truck of rice from Abuja to drop in Owerri. The truck traveled all the way from Abuja, crossing different states. Immediately it entered in Soka. That when we started seeing all manner of checkpoints, both uniformed and ununiformed. Between Nsoka to Owerri, we spent 545,000 naira to all manner of tax force. And we even lost some bag of rice because they carry some of them. And interestingly, some of these people are purport to be working for local government and the states. And interestingly, most of these funds are not going to the accounts of the state because they have POS people who they will use to collect money from you, unaccounted for. Pure extortion. But under imagine, okay, I have produced the rice at a price. With this cost, of course, will go to consumers. I will have to add this cost to consumers. But under the new tax regime, it is uniformed. This kind of madness and criminality will not be on the road. And see, this issue of don't reduce corporate tax, go and check Economist where they have huge corporate tax. What is it? Go to South Africa. I looked at South Africa revenue in 2022. $126 billion. $81 billion came from way of corporate tax and individual tax. 31% of tax. South Africa has a 31% tax, 25 to 35 to 31% tax to GDP revenue ratio. In Nigeria, it's a different ballgame altogether. We don't even have people paying tax in this country. And that's the truth. There are some part of Nigeria that does not pay tax. And we know it. And they will not pay tax until the right regimes are put in place. If you look at most of the tax, look, why do you think Lagos is blossoming? Why do you think Delta State is blossoming? Why do you think River State, Ogun State has more tax revenue than other states? My Imo State is one of the poorest states in terms of IGR. But I can tell that if we put the right fiscal incentives in place, Imo State can generate as much tax, even more than Ogun State. If there's security, I'll give you an example. Gino Food, one of the biggest food companies in the whole world, came into Kebbi State. They wanted to do Gino Food, the whole value chain, tomato puree. They got 5,000 farmers to do 5,000 hectares, backward integrated tomato farm. They set up massive factory. One night, bandits invaded their center to kidnap their expatriates. They evacuated. I don't know if they've gone back. Those are the kind of things that we experience in Nigeria. Look at the southeast of Nigeria. I'll give you an example. In 2018, Nigeria signed a contract with Nike to sponsor this to our NFA, our national team. Nike paid us $3 million. One day after the World Cup opened, Nike made almost about $240 million from sale of Nigerian apparel. Nike, Puma, Adidas, between them have turnover over $60 billion. They don't own any factory of their own. Most of their production are done under contract franchising. Most of the companies producing those things for them are in Bangladesh, are in Indonesia, are in China, are in Vietnam. Nigeria has some of the best tailors, some of the best apparel producers in Aba and Onitsha and Kano. A thinking governors forum, those of the southeast, should think about how do we create competitive agro-producing clusters so that Nike, Adidas, and Puma can actually be producing their apparel in Nigeria, so that we can eat into the $60 billion turnover annually. We can at least produce $5 billion worth of those products. Under George Bush and Bill Clinton, they developed the African Growth Opportunity Act to allow Africans export into America tariff-free. America imports $120 billion worth of apparels and shoes every year. None comes from Nigeria. Rather, we are importing things from Pakistan. A thinking government should be, how do we empower those within those sectors to ensure that we'll export into the US? Today, a bag of rice is selling for almost about 100,000 naira per 50 kg. I have a rice mill. To produce a 50 kg bag of rice from the farm gate to the milling plant takes nothing less than 58,000 naira per 50 kg bag. But what brings the cost to 100,000 are all the criminal tax levies, all the extortions on the road from the production point to the place where it is sold. And then, of course, greedy middlemen. So we should be asking ourselves these questions. If we put the right incentives in place, if I'm a governor, What I should be thinking is, how do I make my state more competitive? I drove into Eco Atlantic. It was done under a PPP framework. There is no state in Nigeria that cannot develop its own tourist heaven. If we have Banana Island in Lagos, how come somebody is not doing Plantain Island in Onitsha, between Asaba and Onitsha, where you have a riverway? How come? People should be thinking, how come somebody is not doing Uguta Wonderland, where you have a Uguta Lake? So these people are not thinking, and that's the truth. You see this country, there is no country blessed like Nigeria. I was thinking, I was in Kigali for 15 days. For the 15 days that I was in Kigali, I didn't see any pothole. The light did not blink one minute. Kigali does not have the kind of river tributaries we have in Nigeria. Kigali is landlocked, 26,000 square kilometers, smaller than the southeast. Kigali does not have gas reserve, yet they have uninterrupted power supply. Nigeria with $1.4 trillion gas reserve, $202 billion coal reserve, does not have 24/7 power supply. Now they've diversified power. What are the governors doing to create eco-captive power systems to drive industrial revolutions in their state? If Michael Okpara in 1960s could do 214-kilometer industrial belt, agro-industrial belt, in 6 years, how come the governors with bigger resources are not doing 100-kilometer industrial belt in 8 years? It's a question we should be asking ourselves. I think we owe ourselves that duty in this generation, not to allow the next generation to experience what we are experiencing, and that we must keep on providing solutions, pushing our solutions, and pleading with Mr. President. If the only thing he will achieve in his first 2 terms, or first term or 2 terms, is to totally restructure Nigerian fiscal constitutional framework back to the 1960s framework, history will be very, very kind to him. Because that is the only thing.
Drive productivity and production. Because people have always said our biggest challenge as a country is that we're a consumer nation and that we do not produce as much as we should, and so we end up exporting, or rather importing, much more than things that we can easily even produce here. Is what you just analyzed, is that what would drive productivity and production?
That is not even the argument. The argument is, what are you consuming? Singapore, as small as Alimosho, 712 square miles land size, 5.16 million people, import over $600 billion worth of commodities and services and goods. They even import sand to be able to do shoreline embankment to protect themselves. The question is, what are you importing? I give you an example today. Do you know that it will shock you that despite the fact that we have 64 million arable land mass in Nigeria, our tractor population is less than 45,000 tractors. In areas like Netherlands, like Slovenia, they have tractor population of at least 1,200 tractors per 100 square kilometers. If Nigeria should have enough tractor population to sweat our land mass, we must have at least 800,000 tractors. What are we doing? If we're importing tractors, if we're importing agro-technology to be like Netherlands, nobody will question us. The question is, we are importing junks. And I will also advise, even in the tax regime, we should start taxing luxury. Most Nigerians do not pay tax. You see somebody who is driving a Ferrari worth $2 million. Go to tax office and check how much he's paying. In Malaysia, if you're driving big cars, you pay almost 300% tax on the value of those cars. That is why if you go to Malaysia, those who drive big cars pay big tax. That is why it encourages them to patronize their locally produced vehicles. If we decide today to introduce luxury taxes in Nigeria, tax your bling bling, tax your luxury cars, tax your luxury mansions, tax your luxury lifestyle, people will channel their funds into productive purposes. Because one of the things that pushes most of this ostentatious living is because the funds are not properly generated. Have you seen Elon Musk? Have you seen Elon Musk, the way he dresses? One of the richest men in the whole world, Warren Buffett, still lives in a 4-bedroom bungalow he built in Omaha. Still drives his own Buick car. He invests heavily. He's worth over $100 billion. But in Nigeria, you see people who are not even worth up to $1 billion living larger than life because they are not paying taxes. They are not doing what they are supposed to. They are not engaged in any productive activities. We must get to a point where we build an economy where people are productive, where honest, productive works are rewarded. Tax incentives and tax breaks should be given to those who are into production, who are into honest economic activities. And we must look at it. And the only way we can build this economy is for us to go back to that 1963-1960 constitutional and fiscal framework. Bring out that constitution, dust it, change the regions from 4 to 6, adopt the same fiscal framework. I tell you the truth, When people know there is no longer free lunch in China, they will sit down and work. But as long as we run an economy that is not merit-based, an economy that does not honor honest enterprise and effectiveness, an economy that rewards criminality and take and grab and run, we will never make progress in this country.
You get the point. Now, all these things are very easy to do, though not easy as you think. But the government of the day need to take the bold step by decentralizing both government agencies and economical activities in this country to start getting things done for the benefit of the larger masses of this country. But nevertheless, share your thought with me on the comment section. And of course, you know the vibe now. Click on that subscribe button, follow and share for more updates. Because like this, we more.